Hello, everybody. If it is Wednesday, it's Warhammer. Welcome to another Warhammer Weekly. I am your host, as always, Vince Venturella. Joining me is my ever-present co-host, John Waters. Say hello, Tom.
Hello, friends.
Also joining us this week, our special guest, Colin, also known as Gomo's Itchy Nuisance. Which, by the way that you say that is truly fantastic. Like the Australian accent really does suit Orcish verbiage, I think.
Is it? Oh, that's good. Hi, everyone. Gomo's Itchy Nuisance.
Exactly. It's great. It's great. Now I'm going to make you all self-conscious about it during every battle report.
Yeah, probably.
Colin does fantastic battle reports. He puts them up on the Warhammer YouTubers. If you're not a Warhammer YouTuber, you should be. And if you're not watching Colin, you should be doing that too. Why aren't you doing that? Go to his channel, subscribe to him, watch his awesome battle reports. He does great work. As always, I'll put a link to Colin's channel down below. And go subscribe, please do. It's fantastic. And Colin, you do a lot of like post-processing work, which, man, full credit to you. You like have little explodey like symbols
Yeah,
and
there's a
color
few little
shapes and
things.
Yeah.
Yeah, a few little things to keep it a little bit interesting while it's killing my own army. That's what happens.
You're a better man than me.
Well, I'm rolling one for foot. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was just putting together my first battle report from the tour before the show, and I was like, man, I'm not doing any of that. That is talking over these pictures is hard enough. That is where I'm calling it. Like I'll wait a year or two, and we'll see if I ever get into that. I don't like that. That's tough work. So kudos to you, sir. All right. Well, let's jump right in, shall we? Because as we have said last week, it's going to be just a flood of rumors, I suspect, and information and just everything rolling in. And so let's go ahead and get right into it. There was a lot of stuff spoiled this week, or potentially spoiled this week, and we're going to talk about that, of how likely is what was rumored or spoiled. Giant finger quotes on that one. The first thing that we got was actually some text from the novel, potentially.
Yep.
So, Tom, why don't you take us through that little piece first? We'll talk about this quickly because we're going to kind of come back to it in the bigger spoiler, but just kind of give us the overview of that piece.
Yeah, absolutely. What I would say is that the novel's by A. Lanning, and it deals with the aftermath of the end times. Prologue makes clear that Sigmar survives, and the whole plot takes place kind of following that. In the prologue, Sigmar, I guess, pulls the winds of magic through the gap into the warp, and he, in the process, the pure, untouched currents of the warp are tainted with the personification of the winds, i.e., the incarnates. And so basically, like, the incarnates are born anew as gods, which we had kind of talked about this, and none of this is real surprising if this is legit. And it kind of follows a single character, Martellus Mann, a Reichsguard quartermaster. And so what ends up being revealed is that there are a number of things of this world that appears to be this world called Regalia, that appears very similar to the old world, or to the Warhammer world as we knew it, only there's some distinctives. There's no Ulthuan, there's a huge land bridge, there's no elven or dwarven cities per se, but it seems like it talks about there being like outposts, I think, and I think this is the one that talks about that. No, it's not. Sorry.
Yeah, it still looks like Earth, which is, of course, the Warhammer world is a big Earth knockoff, right? It still has Empire provinces. Some of them get named, but there's still some new places too. So it's a lot like the old world that we know and love, but with some new spice thrown in to make it a little more caliente.
Yeah.
It's a bit strange that.
What's that, Colin? Go ahead.
I was to say it's a bit strange that you got all these new bits, and then you have things like Middenheim that's still there, and Altdorf isn't, and it's going to be interesting if this is how it goes.
Yeah, it'll be curious. And then it closes. Spoiler if this in fact is legitimate. Supposedly, man comes to the conclusion at the end of the book that there's a new emperor that has announced his plan to conquer the whole world, and it's Karl Franz is this emperor, and man decides that Franz must be Sigmar reborn. But in the epilogue, Sigmar is chained somewhere, and his power starts to dwindle. and that, but then he smiles and says that his great work to eliminate chaos once and for all is only started. He vows to conquer the warp.
Yeah, I love it. Let's take just a quick moment to talk about this. So we talked about how it's still an Earth analog. I think that's good. I think pressing the reset button this way, this is a genius way to split the difference, right? The problem with the Warhammer world, the old world, was too many of the corners were filled in. I always go back to that Pirates of the Caribbean thing with the bad guy from the East India Tea Company who was like, the map is getting filled in, Jack. There's no more monsters. We know what everything is. Your kind doesn't have a place here anymore. And his point was that, like, this sort of adventurous spirit of the unknown and all this stuff, that's gone now. We know the map. We know the shape of it. This is the end. We've got it all down. Now it's just a matter of getting everything under control. And I think this is a great way to blow up the old world while still keeping it, right? Like, it's honestly, yeah. I think it's a pretty genius idea.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I was just saying before the show, like, I don't think anyone's really going to be too worried about the fluff change. I think we can all see that, you know, it sort of needs it. It's a bit, you know, 1 minute to midnight. It's been for so long, and it's like, let's change it up. You know, let's get some new stuff. So I like the idea if it works out.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely agree too. That 1 minute to midnight, such a good statement. Yes. The Warhammer world has always been like, chaos is going to win. It's always about it's always about to happen any minute. They're all going to come kill us all, right? It's just survival. But I love the idea of Sigmar taking the fight to them, and we've talked about this on the show before, right? I want to see good guys punching Chaos Knights in the face, just exploding Chaos Knight's skull right through the back. I want to see some good guys on the level of the bad guys. I'm not asking for balance or for this to become all about good versus evil or something simplified like that. I'd like lots of different things going on. I just don't want, like, right now, it's giant chaos. They are all-encompassing, and we've got a bunch of little people scrapping around for the things. I want to see a lot of interesting people, and I want to see some good guys on the same level as the bad guys.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, it's like most fantasy worlds have been. I don't know if they're going to do this, but I've always liked the idea that if you look at any of the other fantasy worlds like Tolkien and stuff, it's always like the good guys were really good, but that was thousands of years ago, and they're all shit now. You know, it's always the way, like, you know, the Dwarf Empire's dead, the Elf Empire used to be good, and now it's crap. It'd be nice in this world if they made it that we are at the height of the power, or we're growing to the height of the power, you know, rather than, you know, just looking back all the time going, oh, we were good once, you know.
Oh, so, that is so funny you say that. I literally have a stick up my butt about that exact thing. Like, Tom will attest, like, because I'm a role player as well, and man, I have such a big complaint about this. It is the bit, like, I 100% agree. Yes, enough of that everything used to be great mentality. Yeah.
So who knows? They might not do that, but, you know, they got the option, I guess, now.
That's right. No, I like it. I like it. All right, so I think that's good on the story front. Let's get into the real meat of this.
Can I say something real quick? The name that was attached to this when this leaked, by the way, about this novel, was the same name on a different forum that released the rumors that follow.
Yes.
Yes, it's the same person, aren't they?
Yeah, it's the same person, right? So I say all of that to say, like, if the rumors that follow are bunk, then it calls into question in what we've just talked about.
Yep. All of this stands and falls together. Yep. Very good. No, I like it. All right, so let's move into, now then, obviously the big spoil, the big reveal, or whatever you want to say, the big rumor, was this wall of text. And I mean, I don't know a better term for what got posted, right? It's like somebody spent 2 hours with the book and was just like furtively typing everything they could think of or grab or remember or whatever, just Jack Kerouac, you know, just stream of consciousness onto the page. So I think, yeah, absolutely. So let's start at the beginning with this. Before we get into any of it, many of our viewers probably saw some of the rumors. We're going to talk about them in a little more detail. But all three of us have seen them. Let's start at the very beginning. Given what you saw and you read, how likely, and what you've seen other places, confirmation, disconfirmation, whatever, how likely do you believe this to be true? And if it is, we'll talk later about how happy you are about it. But right now, just True or false, percentages, give me odds, give me whatever. Colin, you're the guest. You get to go first.
I'd probably still put it. I'd probably still put it below 50-50. I mean, if you're saying like, if you went through each item here and checked it off, true or false, once it comes out, I'd probably still put it below 50-50. There might be things that are hit on, that are, they are grey areas that you could say were right, but yeah, I don't know. I'm still putting it down at like a 30, 3 out of 10, 4 out of 10 maybe. Yeah.
All right. Very good. I like it. Now, when we go into the specific things, so clearly you're leaning toward this doesn't seem real to you. So when we get into the specifics, hit on some of those things that really that call out to you, and you're like, yeah, this is a thing that really makes me question and makes me lean toward false. So we'll keep that in mind. Tom, what about yourself? What are your odds?
Well, so I follow, I don't follow just one, when one rumor drops, but generally, there are certain voices that I found that are much, much more reliable than other voices. And so it's been interesting to watch the response to this, because this is a new voice. This is somebody that's just popped up and said, hey, I read the book. Here's some rumors. Here's some knowledge. I'm going to drop some knowledge.
Let me drop some knowledge on you.
And so what's so fascinating about this is that the people that are we consider the reliables in the community, Hastings, Darnock, those are on Warsphere, on Daka Daka, Sad Panda, they're split on these rumors. And that's what I find so fascinating. Because Sad Panda and Darnock came out and just blatantly said this is all false. This is not mapped to reality. This is not what's coming. Sad Panda made the comment that wow, this may even be better than what is actually coming. Okay. But Hastings came back and said yes, this is actually. He said, I wouldn't throw all of it out, because he said a lot of this actually corresponds exactly with what I've heard. And then when somebody pushed him on it, he made a list of 5 to 10 things out of that long list that said, I heard exactly this. This is exactly what I heard. These are the names that I heard that was passed on to me.
Yeah, that's the thing. So, I think there is some grounding in it, but... Yeah,
as an individual who specializes in my professional life in redaction criticism and looking at, information divergence in theories of these kind of information transfer. We clearly have 2 different sources going on here, or 2 different streams of rumors, and which could lead to a bunch of different stuff. It could lead to one is that some of this guy had a kernel of truth and then he's embellished upon it. Another possibility is that would mean that there are some that is true, namely what Hastings confirmed, and then the person that posted then added things that he wished list on top of it. At one big troll job, which would be fantastically hilarious, by the way, if that's what this ends up being. Another possibility is that they're talking about 2 different products.
Right.
Because a lot of the discrepancies that Darnock and Sad Panda called foul on were on the box set. And but Sad Panda and them may have seen the box set that's coming in July. This individual said that he had seen the books that are coming out, which we know aren't coming in the beginning of July, which would point to the later fall release. And so the box that he was talking about,
I don't know if we have any kind of idea when that date is.
Right, exactly. But if he's talking about the later release, he could actually be talking about a different starter set.
Right.
He may not be talking about the box that's getting dropping at the beginning of July. And so, there is a universe where these 2 sets of rumors could coexist, or these sources could coexist. So all of that to say, I'm inclining that probably 50 to 70% of it's true. But I think that there's maybe it's just my personal humor. I think that there's a troll job going on in here. I think that he's added some stuff knowing that he has knowledge, true knowledge, and that it will be confirmed. I think that he has cast things in the worst possible light, and that he has intentionally thrown things into gas onto the fire, joking, of things that are just simply not true, like the Nigmas, for example.
Yeah. And so, and for those out there who say, some of the initial thing was, well, this is a lot of trouble to go to for somebody who's just trolling. And I'm like, well, so that means it must be true. One, have you met the internet? Like, nerds have a lot of time on their hands, okay? Like, and as referenced by all of us playing this hobby, like this is a thing that is free time dependent. And
when is the next time they're going to get a troll opportunity like this?
Right, yeah, this is great.
Like 6 years?
And two, this isn't even close to the biggest snow job, right? The biggest one is obviously like the Pancake edition of Warhammer 40K 6th edition that came out 3 years ago or something, which was like a whole leaked edition. Somebody wrote like an edition of the game, basically. I mean, not the full book, but pretty darn close. They wrote a lot. And it was like a playable rule set. People started playing it because they thought it was the legit release, and then it wasn't. It was just a snow job. So, like, people can go a lot farther than this. That's number one. And then
a couple of guys sitting around could do this in a night. You know,
sure.
A few guys, a couple of guys from university.
Yeah, sure, just banging out. Absolutely.
Yeah. So.
Absolutely agreed. So, and I'll give odds about the same. I think your percentage is pretty darn accurate. I'm going to say I think about 50 to 70% of this is true. And I think that there's stuff in here that either is being misread, misinterpreted, mistranslated, whatever, embellished. I'll even give that some of the mistakes should be innocent, right? But
sure.
But they're like just natural telephone, right? But I think there's definitely. I do not think we should take this as dictum. Now, let's go ahead and take this as dictum. So now that I've said that, we're gonna break this down, and we're gonna just assume this is all 100% fact, knowing that none of us actually think this. We're gonna say, hey, let's pretend like we think that for a moment and go through some of this. So let's cover some highlights. Tommy, kick us off.
Yeah. So the game would be Age of Sigmar, a Warhammer strategy game. It's a full-fledged rule system, and again, this is. Let me reiterate: this is an individual looking at the hard book, okay? Right. The multiple books actually that came with this, 2 to 3 books. There's some contradictory information here, but we'll get to that. So so he's looking at the full-fledged rule system, not a skirmish game. It's not necessarily restricted to a low miniature count, but he said that 50 models on average, way lower possible. And then you can even, in general, you use units, but you can field any army consisting of a whole army of only single models. Which
what does that mean when they say it's not a skirmish game, but it's a full-fledged one, but it's round bases? Like, would you say 40K is not a skirmish game?
Yeah, exactly. I think you're hitting on a great point there, Colin, which is what is the definition of a skirmish game, right? So to me, a skirmish game is, like, when I think of it in my mind, it's totally dependent on 2 facts: low model count and individual models, right? Like that being the foundation the game is built on. So no, I don't think 40K is a skirmish game because there are still units.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I think Infinity is a skirmish game. Wartime is a skirmish game, right?
And what's War Machine then? I guess it's in that middle ground where you can scale up.
Yeah, I think to some degree, because they actually have like some small units, but it's still a lot of independent people, right? Like you still have a lot of independent units walking around. So it's probably like the next step up, some shade, just slightly above skirmish. But I think most people would probably still call War Machine a skirmish game, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Just in sort of common parlance.
So he suggested that there are 2 books, Rules and Scenarios. Is one of the books, and Compendium with pictures, unit cards, and stuff, and all the fluff in another. He said one fascinating thing was he said that there are unit cards for almost every model that at least he could see in the second book, including like the Forge World models.
No. Now this would map to what we said last week with Ravening Hordes. That rumor that there's going to basically be some kind of like Ravening Hordes 2 Electric Boogaloo type of situation. For those of you who remember Ravening Hordes and the transition between 5th and 6th, they threw out all the army books. They said none of those are a thing anymore. Forget everything that's in there. This book is where all your armies come from now. This is your units. And it was one small book that contained everything. And by the way, I have heard multiple people on the internet say, that is impossible. You can't fit everything into one book. You people are out of your minds. You certainly can. Let me let you know a secret. That army book you're paying for is 3 pages of real information.
Yeah.
Okay, like that is the reality of it. Like that, or go, and if you don't believe me, go grab the PDF for Ravening Hordes. I guarantee you can find it free online. There are 15 armies in that book, and it's like a 40-page document. And it also has the rules for the system. And like magic items and special rules. Like the giant table is in there. Like everything is packed in this. You can squeeze this stuff tight. And it's not in like 2-point font. I mean, it's legitimately a reasonable size. We just waste a lot of space with pictures and all this stuff. Not waste. Waste is the wrong word. But, you know, these things take a lot. We want that stuff in our books. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying you can really boil this down, right, to a very thin product if necessary. So, and I think this matches to that. So every model, the good side of that is every model you own, every one of those things back there sitting behind me right now, all usable, right, in the changeover. You can use them. How good they are? Whatever. How many you can use at once? I don't know. You can use all of them. You're not losing a single model you've invested in. That's a good
thing. I'm going to kind of move quickly as best I can.
Let's do it.
So the rules, 10,000-foot view, the change is like it's all new rules, all new mechanics. Okay, we're not talking like 40K second to third edition. We're talking.
Hold on, don't jump to the rules yet, because you're skipping something I really want to hit on, which is the army building thing. Okay,
well, this is in that initial paragraph.
Okay, got it. Keep going.
But again, this is a 10,000-foot view, not individual rules. The change is like a change from Warhammer 8th to Blood Bowl. Like, sure. We're talking a different game, okay? You'll be able to use all your minis, but we're talking about this is no longer Warhammer.
As we know it.
Yeah. Okay. All the races are basically there, some with varying degrees of emphasis. To the tech level between ancient Roman and early medieval, a lot less gunpowder, for those of you guys that are interested in less gunpowder.
That's for you, Doom and Darkness. They heard you. Games Workshop heard you and is listening. Less gunpowder.
There are the world seems to be a lot more open-minded, so a Empire Orc alliance is not unthinkable and unusual. So it's not as divided harshly between good and bad guys, in a sense. So army building.
I mean, if you just stop there though, like I would then. It seems like to me that you could see that if they're trying to rescue Warhammer as such, they're going, well, we've got all these kits out there. They've already made them, so maybe we should just bring out something where everyone can just use it, and it is a simple. It's not Warhammer at all. It's not Ninth. It's not anything. And let's just see how this thing goes for a while. And will it pull more people in? I don't. Maybe that's what they're going to do, and then maybe later on they'll bring out something. If this actually, keeps it going, I guess. I don't know. Maybe that's what this is.
Yeah, I think certainly you're right that there's a huge effort to bring in new players here, right? Like if you're not growing, you're dying, and never is that more true than in the wargaming space. Like I don't know the statistics on miniature gaming, but I know in role playing you lose about 20% of your customer base every year. Like that is just if you just make normal products, you are releasing products. Your standard attrition rate is 20% of your customer base a year. That's assuming releases. You bleed a lot more if you don't release anything. So you got to really work to attract new people.
Yeah, and the other point that came up, I think it was in that block. That's what I bring up now, is something about there wasn't really any new models or something. Is it in that block that you just read, Tom? It was somewhere.
Where that. I think it's farther on.
Yeah, down below. But yeah, they talk about.
Okay, maybe I jumped ahead. That's why I was thinking. Maybe they're bringing out something where they're basically doing it on the cheap, so to speak, that they can try and resurrect something using the current set.
I think they're interested in that. At the same time, there was another rumor, which we aren't touching on as part of this, but where one of the big rumor mongers had said, like, he's seen the number of kits that are sort of lined up to drop, and he put it at 30 plus over the initial release time.
Yeah.
Like, that's a lot of kits, which I want to see. I want to see it rain.
You do. You want to see new models, and that's why I was looking at this game. It seems a bit weird,
Yeah. So I think just this particular release doesn't happen to contain new models, but I think they're gonna. I really think they are gonna make it.
Well, again, a reminder: this individual, according to his own words, has a book in hand, and has the novel, and so he wouldn't have necessarily a schedule of new specialized units.
Sure. Quick note to this guy. one picture would really help your cause. I understand you're worried about them tracing the photo through like the watermarks and stuff on there. There are a thing in the world called burner phones. Criminals use them in television shows all the time. Go to your local Kmart or whatever happens to be in the country and where you live. Buy a burner phone, activate it, pay for it with cash, activate it, take a picture, upload it to a fake Twitter account, point somebody else at it from another account, and there you go. Look at that. See, that's how you criminal, folks. Okay.
There'd be lots of ways to get a picture that you're not worried about where it came from. But yeah, seems to be
seriously. So army building. This may explain why everybody was always wrong when we were talking about what the 6 new armies are. And what I mean by that is that instead of picking a race, you pick a god to align yourself with, one or more. They like your champions get power-ups from the gods, and you could have so if you have multiple gods, they have to be from the same pantheon, so you couldn't have like Nurgle Sigmar or something like that. Then you choose whatever unit you want from any race. There's no limit as far as you can tell, although there are some mechanics that kind of privilege certain combinations in races, like Grim Gore, for example. His powers only affect mortals and enemy units in the proximity of mortals.
So. Love it. I love everything about this. Yes.
I like it. I do find it weird that Hashut is there. That's the weird.
Oh no. That's
Tom lost his mind when he heard a Hashut name dropped.
I mean, it is, but it just seems they've been trying to kill that god in that race for how long, and then it pops up here. It's like,
well, what I'm saying is, this is what I told Vince. Like, I've never been happier to be more wrong than I was last week when I said, oh, the ones that are likely to lose out the most are Chaos Dwarves. That is absolutely true, unless they fully embrace.
Yeah, I mean, the way I see it, Chaos Dwarves are like a bad penny. They just keep coming back. You can't get rid of them. It's just impossible.
But let me point out, like, this isn't in this new world, this should not be surprising.
Right.
Okay. Because here's the reality. I can play a human army that worships Hashut. Okay. So now all this means is that Chaos Dwarves are dwarves, which I don't even think you can have in an army. Like, they're like, you'd have auxiliary units of dwarves, from the best we can tell from what's been kind of talked about, that worship Hashut. And you can
use all your models. You can have an army of dwarves in some way or another.
Right. So this is just dwarves that are part of an army that worship Hashut, like that. And so, like, if you want to think bigger picture than just the rumors that have been released here, this opens the door to kind of what we talked about a couple weeks ago of like them releasing sprues, like selling individual sprues for like particular like upgrades. Because what you can do now is you could buy a Hashut sprue that turns all of your normal dwarves into Chaos Dwarves with a Chaos Dwarf banner.
That sounds
like it better come with tall, pointy hats.
Say what, Vince?
Said it better come with tall, pointy hats.
Not
elf hats, like the Pope hats.
80s model. Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. No, but what that allows them to do is to take their entire model range and literally just sell upgrades for the different gods if people want them, and so they can double dip in the like. It is a wonderful marketing move that they've done. If this is the route that they're going.
Also, by the way, having an incentive that's god-based, like even if it's minor, that is all you need. Like, I am a big fan of incentive-based game design. Like, having it so this unit bonuses this other thing, but only if it's this type, means that people will often take that type. Fluff people do it because it makes sense to them. Look, there's a bonus here. I know what else thing I should choose to be fluffy and correct. Hardcore rules people do it because they want to squeeze the most blood from the stone. It's a wonderful incentives like that are a wonderful alignment of fluff players and competitive players to make the same choices.
Yep.
Yeah. Totally. Yep.
So what we have is in Regalia for the gods that are fully detailed in this new book are some new gods and then some of the incarnates basically that have become gods, and this is what he was alluding to. So there are 7 big gods that have 7 schools of magic associated with them, and that are detailed in the book. There's a head god that's like Geshemet, or Gesh.
Yeah, let's not worry about it. A weird name.
For some fertility natural disaster god. And then there's a bunch of dual pairs of deities. So the death gods are either Nagash and Mor. The Smith and Labor are Hashut or Gelt, and the War Gods are Grimgor and Myrmidia. And so then there are 5 other pantheons that are mentioned, but the rules aren't detailed. And so these other pantheons are Chaos, Sigmar, the Kuthadai, which are the Elven gods, the Exotl, which are the old ones, and then the Sorry.
Don't even try to read that. Triumvirats.
The Triumvirats, which are
just say
the Skaven
deities.
deities.
Correct.
Triumvirats, which are the
by the way, somebody thought like that makes me believe it. Like that thing alone lends credence to this whole thing, the Triumvirate, because there is a special character in the Imperial Guard in 40K named Sly Marbo. Okay? He's a jungle fighter. Do I need to spell it out for everybody what this guy is? Okay, Sly Marbo. And so that got printed. That got put in a book. Some guy in an office at GW, he thought of that and high-fived his buddy. He was like, Sly Marbo, dude, this is genius! And they laughed, and they were just having a grand time. Down to the pub for a beer. And so, like, the Triumvirate, somebody thought of that and was like, oh, that's it, rounds on me tonight, boys.
It's got straight up written all over.
I know.
Yeah, I mean, in what is actually alluded to in the fluff later is that it's a horned rat and 2 more, and the 2 more supposedly that are powerful souls that have been stolen and corrupted.
Yeah, I want to know who we got. I'm excited to learn. I'm hoping for the
so
best.
The Skaven have just added, if this is true, they've added 2 to their number from other very, very powerful individuals.
That's what we do. Let's get on to the rules stuff, because this is some big stuff, like the actual profile stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the rule stuff is bonkers. You have basically all new stats: melee, range, might, armor, initiative, resolve, and wounds. There's, as Vince pointed out to me earlier, there's no move in here.
Right. And where's the? I don't know. How do I know how far I move?
Everyone's 6 inches.
Yeah.
Done.
Exactly. So, but the turn sequence seems to be changed. So rather than like you go, I go, it's basically unit activation based. So like one unit moves all of their stuff, does all their stuff. Yeah. And so like a unit moves and does all that stuff, and then finally, and what was somewhat unclear about this is it looks like one player moves all of their moves, shoots, and casts. Player 2 moves, shoots, and casts, and then finally, after everybody has done all their moving, shooting, and casting, all the melee takes place.
Yeah, it's hard to say. And what was interesting about the combat as well is that like there was a thing where the blocks fight, and then the aggressor or whatever, or somebody can choose to keep the winner, I guess, of that fight, that first round of combat. You don't you either break the unit completely, kill them to a man, or there's no like breaking from combat in the traditional way we think of it. Either you make some kind of roll, probably on, I'm guessing, resolve, to keep fighting, right? And if you do, you just keep fighting again. And either you kill them out, or the person chooses to withdraw. And then if you make your roll again to keep fighting, you can try to kill them again. And this keeps going until you fail to keep fighting, as you the winner, I suspect. Or you, the loser, just says, screw it, and calls the retreat. Yeah, so that seems to be
combat res and all that.
Yeah. No combat res.
It's simplifying it.
Yeah, and if if units don't get killed, they heal up fully at the end of the turn, at the end of the phase.
Yeah, that one's a bit of a weird one, but anyway.
Yeah, whatever that means. Like when that happens, how that happens, who knows?
Yeah, somebody likened it on the boards. They were analyzing it. And they likened it potentially to the magic card. So, like in Magic, if a creature takes damage at the end of the turn, it basically heals all of its damage.
Right, if it's not killed, yeah.
You just basically have to kill, otherwise it's, yeah, okay.
Yeah. No,
Very
let's see. Both sides in melee fight simultaneously, as we mentioned, no morale resolution. Units use a 1-inch 40k formation without facing.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Magic spells, 1 use only. You get like ascension points, and like champions can get ascended and upgrade and be super sweet. Units generally are going to be like solos or unit sizes 1 to 3 or 3 to 15. And he said 15 was the highest he saw in just looking through the stuff. But you can field lots of different one-man units. Champions aren't bought; they're granted automatically. Rules for different weapons, magic items, war engines, monsters, special rules, yada yada yada. The one thing they point out was there's a large section on terrain and larger than the actual rules. So terrain and scenarios is a really big deal in this new edition.
Yeah, there's so much I want to touch on here real quick. Colin, you go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I can understand the whole. This type of thing brings out why I think terrain will be big, and that's because if it is skirmish like this, it's like Mordenheim. I mean, terrain has to be big, and it has to play a big part. And I think maybe that's why people have been harping on it, because it's, when it's just natural with this skirmish environment, you need to have more terrain on the board. It needs to actually do something. So.
Yep.
There's
also been a lot of rumors that GW is going to, again, just hit us with tons of terrain boxes, new kits, new sets.
I hope they're priced like the old ones.
Yeah.
All right. Let me show you. Let me do a little impression of when you read that. When you said a line that said units are like 40K with 1 inch, blah 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 formation. Let me show you what happened to everybody who's watching our show right now. They all went. And I'll lift it up in their chair about 1 inch. You see that? As they clenched, they got it. Oh, tightened up. All right.
Yeah.
So, and I can understand that trepidation, but let me see if I can maybe help your glutes relax a little. Okay. People are worried that the game will become too simplified. This is a very common complaint, right? That the game will be, if we lose unit facing and the movement phase, the game will be too simple, it won't be tactical, etc. Okay, maybe. I'm not going to say that that's wrong. Okay, but I'm going to say that Modus Tollin says that's also not exactly the case. Okay, that is not. It's not if not be, then not if. And here's what I mean by that. There's nothing about having a tactical game that requires these elements or that level of complexity. Chess is I think, very complex game to play against your enemy, and the way the pieces move and the movement of that is quite fairly simple. I could teach it to anybody in 5 minutes, but I don't think they would be a great chess player in 5 minutes. It would take them years and years and years of study to be even probably a moderately good chess player. Magic the Gathering has an incredibly simple set of rules. Again, I can teach you how to play Magic in 5-10 minutes. But to play Magic at a high level, somebody like a Louis Scott Vargas, LSV, like these people who are the best players in the world, they play in ways it's hard for you to even wrap your brain around, because they understand what's in your hand. They know how to tap lands when. They know when to play a certain card, how to use the stack, when to go into the red zone, when not to, when do you sack for a block, when do you not, when are you racing down their life counter, how many turns to dead. There's 1,000 variables going on at every moment, and they know all of them. And it doesn't take much in a game to make that happen. So let me suggest an alternate world to you here. If you're getting in these weird fights where you can keep fighting, choose to retreat, all these kind of things are going on, and there's these different interactions happening, if you're activating units at a time, that to me smacks of very tactical play. If I have to choose which unit is going where, when, and I don't necessarily know I get to move the rest of my army in to support them, if I can choose to tactically withdraw from combat maybe, break away, try to regroup, all that says really tactical to me, and tactical in a way that isn't dependent on dice or knowing the minutia of the 1 inch rule or exact unit facing. Right?
I mean, I see what you're saying, but I think people aren't. I mean, at the end of the day, what you're saying, you're describing something that could be War Machine, for example. Okay, movement. There's a different movement thing, but there's all these combinations. I think people basically what you're saying. It's a new game, and it looks like it's a new game. So then the worry becomes, if it's a new game, why am I getting into this new game apart from some other new game? And I think that's I think the love of fantasy has always been that movement phase. So that Magic has changed. Shooting and combat. Well, combat's changed a lot. Shooting hasn't. But movement, I think, has always been the differentiator. And your analogy of chess, I think, supports the idea that movement is massively important, because in chess, everything has a different move. And knowing that move is whereas if you get away from the movement is less important, it's more about the combos. then I think you're more describing something like War Machine, and in that case, I think they're going to struggle, because why would I choose this game over another game where they're actually going to talk to me, and they're actually going to organise tournaments for me, and they're actually going to, actually say thank you to their customers. And I think that's the worry that people are nervous about. At least I am. But I see what you're saying. I think it still would be a good game. Don't get me wrong. But it's not Warhammer. It's not Warhammer Fantasy Battle.
Yeah, and I think that is a very fair critique, honestly, Colin. I really do. And also what I'm saying is that I think it is entirely possible that the game could still remain just as tactical with a different type of movement phase.
Exactly.
There could be different concerns. Like, we don't need the exact movement phase we have now. There could be lots of different ways that the movement phase could become tactical. I do agree with you. The movement phase has always been very important. And here, to carry the chess analogy, you're absolutely right. It's all move. It's a game of move.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I'm jumping the gun here, but I'm seeing, as we talk through it, like, I would not be surprised. I think there's rumours out there that this is the first drop, and then there is another game coming. Or is that right, Tom? I think that's someone saying no, that's not. This is it, and then there's still got some. I think Darnock's still saying there is another. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if this is a way to drop something quick. They don't need to release a heap of new minis. They have a new environment. They're introducing a new world, and then down the track, bringing out those 6-faction army books that you can use with your existing battle, like your block troops, would actually work. Because if they went straight into trying to release a new version of the battle, Warhammer Fantasy Battle, they would have to bring out 6 faction books just to make it compatible. Whereas here, they don't have to. They drop a new game. Everyone understands the new rules in terms of this game, and then they're able to bring out the other one at a slower pace. Maybe, I don't know, but maybe I'm just wishful thinking there. But
I think you point out a good. I think your point is very well taken. That we don't know what this represents. Between Age of Sigmar, this, and anything else down the line, we have no real clue what represents what, right? We don't know the edge of the universe, as it were.
That's right. Yeah.
I think that's fair. All right.
Probably still only halfway through this.
We're a little more than, So here's what I'm going to do. I think we're going to call it there on this. There's still a lot of story stuff out there, but we covered most of the big rules. I think that the quick things we could say about the story pieces are just, as we expected, all the races get new names. Like, they're not elves anymore. They've got funny names, and that seems right in line with 40K. You're not Imperial Guard. You're Adeptus, whatever the heck is. I don't know.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Tempestus.
Yes, sure. You get funny names now. Fine. And there's lots of interesting stuff going on in the fluff. I mean, I'm not trying to short shrift it. I think it's all very fascinating. I just think we have to cut it for time. So there we go. There's lots to talk about. We'll come back to it.
Another brief thing, real quick. Another rumor that kind of slipped in this week. Somebody had confirmed that the base sale, like unit of sale, that we're looking at is going to be 5 figures for 23 euros, which is approximately $26.
Yeah.
So the normal box that you'll see on the shelf will be 5 figures at this like $26 to probably $30 range.
Yeah, and I think people will lose their minds over that, which I honestly don't have much of a problem with. I'm not looking for like weight of plastic. That doesn't have much value to me, right? Like,
sure.
It's easy to get caught up in that anchor pricing. What I'm concerned with is how much do I need to play an army? If you tell me 5, because by the way, this is how War Machine is priced. War Machine figs are pretty expensive outside of like the starter boxes.
Yep.
Malifaux, very expensive figs. They're beautifully sculpted, but they ain't cheap, folks. And they're $9, $10, easily $12 a fig, $16, $18, $25 more in the case of individual bigger minis. And nobody bats an eyelash because you need like a dozen, right? And like, so it's whatever. So it's not about how much I'm getting.
Kings. Yeah, I mean, look at the Blight Kings. No one whinges about the price of Blight Kings. Right. And they're great figs, but you get what you need in the box because you're only ever going to probably field 5.
Exactly.
Maybe, But if you're talking about witch elves and you want 40 of them,
right? Exactly. Yeah, that's my point. It's a perfect example. Like, if I get 5 to a box for $25 or something like that, but I only need 25 or 40 troops for my whole army, okay. Like, that seems pretty reasonable. So $150 to $200 for an army, like, I don't know, that actually sounds like a pretty square deal, given where we've been at previously. So, the devil's in the details there. Unless anybody out there is seriously rating their purchase based on weight of plastic in the box, right? The things have no value in their own. Spoiler alert, that thing is worth a few cents of plastic. Okay? Like, its value is in the translation onto the table. In a box of clan rats where you get 20 of them for $25, but you need 300 of them, is less valuable than, the 5 Blight Kings that are much more expensive, but that's all you ever need.
Well, and on top of that, guess what? If anybody has armies like I do, you will have an abundance of miniatures that you can proxy.
Oh my God! Yeah, we're all gonna. If this is all true, we're all gonna have titanically large armies. I look forward to my 30,000 points of Tomb Kings, or whatever. All right, so let's get into the feature segment for tonight. We're gonna breeze right past hobby time because we went long on that, but that's because it's all really good stuff and we love to talk about it. And honestly, I'd take even more time, but there we go. So let's talk about the feature segment. Tonight, we're going to talk about O's and G's, the good, the bad, and the ugly. They were a very controversial post in this. One quick fluff thing on them is that they become like the walk-in, and there's a new kind of orc, and they're direct servants of the Exwaddle, the old ones. They had the biggest fluff change in this rumor. And, whoa, I don't even know where to touch that. You can go look it up. I'll include a link to this. But they got weird. I don't know. This is a long way from their soccer hooligan roots. But for right now, we're going to talk about good old 8th edition O's and G's. So, good, bad, ugly. However you define those words. To start with good, Colin, what is your good out of the O and G army? Could be a unit, could be the flavor, could be theme, could be anything you like.
Yeah, it's more good? Theme, I think, for me. It's the character of the entire army. So I think we're one of the us and Skaven are a little bit of the same, where we've got character built into it in terms of misfiring animosity, just going crazy, and the number of troop types that you've got in there, whether or not that's competitive or not, throw that out. But I think the good part, what you're getting with Orcs, and I think they've stayed the same pretty much from edition to edition. That they've kept to that character. That's sort of what I liked about them anyway. Whether or not that actually translates to competitiveness, well, that's another story.
Fair enough. Tom, good. Orcs and Goblins.
I'm just gonna. Mine is actually very similar to Colin's, in fact. But what I would say is that, and I would describe it this way though. They have evocative units. Okay, Doom Divers.
Mm-hmm.
Fanatics.
Sure. Pumpwagons.
Arachnaroks. Yeah. Like all of those are just super, just dripping with character. And I just can't say that about other armies, that they have these super, super evocative units.
I like it. My good will be very simple. Here come to Orcs. I love the attitude. They are the eternal optimists of the Warhammer world. They're always up for a scrap. They're always in a good mood. They always want to get to fighting. I love them.
Yeah, they're not really
nothing
evil.
Keeps a good orc down. All right, so the bad. What is the bad of the Orcs and Goblins, Colin?
I think at the moment, just at least in 8th edition, is that that the game mechanics, the competitive build has turned around to not actually show off too much of that character, so they've become the green dwarfs, so to speak, and I think that's the sad bit. Not to get too much into how you'd fix that, but I think it comes down to the fact that they just can't stand up. They're a combat army that can't really fight, which in the age of rerolls, we just can't get rerolls. We've got one spell and that's it, and that's the sad thing about it, unfortunately. So that's probably my bad.
I like it. Tom, what about you? What's your bad?
I'm going to say it. In my opinion, it's animosity. There's almost no other army that has such an all-encompassing and blatantly negative racial ability. When you throw your animosity dice, you're looking at a 3% chance of something good happening. Just under 3%, dropping double sixes. Now, you could say, well, but it adds to their character and stuff like that, but it's timing is everything in this game. And a bad animosity roll can cost you the game.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And there's very few other races that have that baked in as their racial special ability. that is basically almost every single or most of their units are all staring down. And like they could just flip this with just a single like small switch. They could flip this to be something that would actually like add to enjoyment, and could really change the entire dynamic of what's going on with the animosity. And all they would have to do is say on a 6, so on a 1, current animosity, or on a 1, bad. On a 6, that unit gains frenzy and +1 strength until your next turn. And suddenly the entire dynamic of animosity is changed, and it gets into like their ragey, crazy, like why ain't you fighting mentality. And so it taps into
that frenzy would be more of a line. I'd probably argue that if you ended up rolling 6s in frenzy with your goblins out of leadership, they're going to charge off anyway.
Oh, they're going to shoot off anyways, yeah.
But at least there's a benefit to them shooting off. You're absolutely right, and I'm okay with that.
I'm a long-time Orc player, and I've never I actually want animosity. Like, I wouldn't change it. I mean, I would change maybe some of, like you were saying, like I think maybe some of the positive results would be good. Maybe letting you cast spells, or I don't know. But yeah, I don't know. I'll put it as a bad, but that's maybe I'm just used to it, used to the abuse.
You become a nerd to the pain. Yes. All right, fair enough.
Gives you a good excuse.
True, yeah, I lost animosity. Oh, I understand. That sucks, yeah. That's a good point. My bad is squig hoppers. God, just awful, and just a terrible tragedy. I don't normally care about bad units in a book. You can just ignore them. Like, I'm not crying over Senegors. But this is just a shame, because they are beautiful, wonderful, fantastic models. They look so cool. They're so funny. They're so evocative. Those little goblins bouncing around on their giant red balls.
Dripping with character.
Yeah, and they're just god-awful. Just god-awful. And that is an utter shame.
Yep.
All right, the ugly. UGOI.
So what's the definition of ugly, then? Sorry,
that is for you to define and me to whatever you like.
I mean, it's sort of bad, I guess, again, but it's just the WAG aspect of the rules. I just thought it's overlooked, and it's something that should be really. It should be something that it should offset the animosity side of things, and it just doesn't even get close. And I think most of us don't even remember to call it, which is a bit sad. Considering that we end up being green dwarfs half the time anyway, and sitting back and shooting. So I'd really like that thing to change, that rule.
I like it.
That's a good call.
Tom?
Bloated army list. There's just too much overlap. Like, I think that it needs to be. I think the list needs to be both expanded and condensed. And I'll talk about that. Like, if we're going to do the 9th, like what we'd like to see. Like,
sure.
I think that there's a lot of potential in the list, but there's just so much overlap that that the list just doesn't need it.
Sure. That's fair. I don't mind that at all. My ugly is exactly sort of something you already touched on, which is just you don't have enough incentive to go run across the board. That's ugly, because orcs should be running across the board at all points in time. All orcs should be modeled like this, like, because they're just in mid-stride. They never stop running. So that's what I would like to see more. And I think that's just ugly, because it makes the orcs not feel like orcs.
Yep.
That's unfortunate. I think we'll have to skip what we'd want to see in 9th out of them in lieu of some questions about orcs and goblins, because we have many. So here we go. Let's ask some questions. All right. So Skip, we already answered one of his questions. He said, what is the best build for ONG? And I think, Colin, you sadly answered the question. I really think it is the Green Dwarves gun line, right?
Yeah, it is, unfortunately. Yep.
Yeah. I tend to agree, and it makes me sad as well. And then his follow-up question, which I think you have some experience with from watching your battle reports, his question is, trolls, are they worth it?
I don't know. Well, I'm not the one to go to for advice on 8th tactics, because I think I've got a massive losing record at the moment. But I'd say yes still. I mean, they're for 35 points, what you get. It's one of the only things we can really combat armor with as well. So definitely, although the problem is you find is unless you've got an 18-inch leadership bubble with someone like Azhag or someone, you quickly give away where you're going to go when you start dropping trolls down, because everyone needs staying around them. So that's the only downside to them. But I think they're well worth it.
That vomit is very scary, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
If you're like a cav force, oh god, nightmarish. All right, Materim says, what do you see as the biggest weakness of ONG? I'll let you each take a bite at that, as you're both frequent players of the army. What's the biggest weakness?
Well, I'd say rerolls. I mean, in the age of rerolls, I'd say rerolls. We just can't get, it's too easy to get in there and fluff attacks or whatever. And against elves and stuff, you just can't. That's what stops you getting into combat. If we had, when I say rerolls, it's even like enough buff spells to give or hex spells to give. Like we've got things like the hex spell, the Gork will fix it and stuff like that. Right. But they're just not as effective as some of the other buffs and hexes that you get in some of the other magic decks.
I'm going to go a different direction.
Okay.
And I'm going to say I just blanked. What's the question?
What do you see as the biggest weakness of ONG?
No word saves. Or highly limited word saves.
Five up ward save savages.
Right. That's
pretty good.
Yeah. That is your unit. Like, by putting a shaman in there and upgrading it with a
2 up ward save. Come on.
Yeah, like a 5 up ward save. The Bretonnian army over here, the entire army is staring down a 5 up ward save.
Well, against strength 5.
That's pretty rare, though. I mean, them and Dean
that's
have that.
I want to see less ward saves. Oh my god.
Okay.
I don't know. I again, coming off high elves, I have lots of options for ward saves. I have almost no options for ward saves, and the lack of defense is not offset by their offense.
Yes, I understand.
Yeah, I mean, you could drop some points, and then you don't need ward saves because then you can just put more bodies on the table. It's like Skaven a little bit too. Like, you don't care. You got 80 slaves in a unit. You don't need a ward save. Yeah.
I get it.
That's what
coming off the best army in the game, you're depressed about not playing the best army in the game. When you've been to the mountaintop, everything else isn't the mountaintop, Tom. I understand. All right. So let's see. Rasmus7814 says, where do you see? He says he thinks ONGs are pretty good. They comp lightly in Swedish, and in his point of view, it's actually probably like a mid-top army. And I would say that yes, if you build like the gunline-ish thing or whatever, something like that, or some version around that. I think that being said, I think they are pretty good in something like a Swedish comp. I think they're pretty decent in that kind of comp.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you look at the tournaments that played Swedish and had Orcs, so like the Australian Masters here, 2 years in a row, Orcs have won it, virtually the same build, but it's not a gunline. I mean, It has gunline aspects, but I think gunline in Swedish probably isn't the most effective, maybe potentially.
Right.
That's probably more MS, like getting a lot of drops on the table, a lot of things to take out some of these elf MSU units and stuff. Whereas something like ETC, points denial hammer, is where the gun line shines, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd say they're in the mid to top for sure, but it's down to the player. Like, as you can see with me, I can't even play gunline, I still lose. But you put a good player on it, they know what they're doing. It's I think they're not up there with the elves though, no way. Not even close.
All right. Nicholas Belair says, do you give any credence at all to the ONG joining the Lizardmen in service of the old ones? That we touched on that for just a moment. That is one that I hope that is Balderdash. Most of that I'm pretty positive about. That one I hope is Balderdash. Gentlemen?
Yeah, no comment. I don't know. I mean, to be honest, I skimmed a bit of that, so I'm not even totally sure. Is that the... them
becoming like new types of orcs, and they're all serving as the old ones. They're underground boat people.
Oh, yes. I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, as long as they're still green and they like to fight, I'm probably
They did
okay
say there was like some savage breed that was off to the side. It was like a separate genetic strain. It was like classic orcs and goblins. Okay, well those should be the main ones, and then we should just have this weird offshoot that's underground boat people and service the old ones. I'm okay if that's like a thing. It just shouldn't be the thing. There's a difference between a thing and the thing.
Yeah, which let me just briefly say, it's clear that if this is the fluff that they're going, that they're saving certain concepts and ideas for additional books. Yeah. And that would be one of them. Like the guy said he didn't see squigs at all in the book, and that would explain why. Because the squigs and the savage orcs and stuff, like the savage wing and then the night goblin squig wing don't seem to be making an appearance.
Nice. All right.
We need more squigs.
Yes, indeed. Paul says, who is the best, Gork or Mork?
Well, I mean, the current rendition Gork.
Yeah, agreed. Gork, 100%.
Mork spells are absolute crap.
Yep, exactly. Foot
But,
says you're dead.
Yeah, and yeah, I don't know. Which is the one in 40k? Is that Gorkanauts, Morkanauts, or they're both, aren't they? Those big.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so it's probably not as big a deal in 40k. All right, I'll say Gork.
Fair enough. All right, let's close out with this. So the Colin, this one's specifically for you. MC1 Gamer says, my son is getting into Warhammer, and he likes the look of ONG. Much of this depends on what Knights bring, but give us some suggestions right now as far as 8th is concerned. What is for him to start out? How should he start an Orc and Goblin army? What should he pick up? Just give him a couple units.
Second-hand army off eBay.
Good answer.
I mean, that's the problem. I mean, with 8th, I mean, you've got to pick up some Savages and you've got to pick up some War Machines. I mean, that's what it comes down to, unfortunately. But I mean, I think if you're looking for flavor and stuff, and I reckon the Black Orcs are one of the best-looking models, although they don't rank up that great. Wrangler Squigs, I mean, yeah, I don't know. I mean, they're all. The thing is that the book has got so many cool models and so many different units. You could, if you're not worried about competitiveness, I think you've got a lot of choices there. I mean, even the Orc additional hand weapon guys are still going to do some damage as biggins. So,
yeah,
I think
he had also asked about painting.
Yep.
And what would be the easiest to paint?
Maybe Savages. I don't know.
Yeah, I would say Savages would be one of the advantages that I love is that grab a can of Army Painter, Goblin Green, hit him with that, wash it down with BL Tan, and again the Savages are almost all skin, and then or you could do the darker camo shade or whatnot if you wanted to do for Orcs, and then highlight it back up with something else and you're done.
If you dry brush it, you'd do it quick. Unlike me, I layered mine and then I was nearly killing myself after 40 of them. But if you for a kid dry brushing, I think the Savages are a good first unit.
Yep.
Having said that, I think the Orc boys. I actually haven't painted a lot of the newer. Well, when I say new, what are the actual Orc boy? The ones that come in the battalion box, are they 6th edition, 7th edition?
I think they're the 7th edition models, right?
Yeah, because I haven't actually painted any of them, but they don't look very hard. They look pretty simple too. Bit of green, bit of cloth, you're done. So I think they're quite easy. Night Goblins, I mean, geez.
All of my green skins are goblins, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Or goblin proxies.
But I'd say if you are painting, you've got to go by the actual rule of bigger is darker. So Black Orcs are almost black. Biggins should be dark green, Orcs should be green, and Goblins should be really fluoro-y green. And if you're not doing that, you're not an Orc player. That's what I think.
Wow, look at that. That is a great note to end on. There you go. Colin laying it down. Rules for Orc painting. I like it. All right. Well, we have reached the end of our time. Everybody watching, thank you so much, viewers out there. We will return next week. We imagine the rumors will keep piling in, and we will keep being here, reporting them and talking about them and hoping for the best with them. That's what we're going to do. The train doesn't run you over until it hits you. That's what I say. All right, so Colin, thank you very much for being here, sir.
Yeah, cheers for having me. That's good.
Like I said, I will put a link to Colin's channel down below. Do go watch his battle reports. Subscribe to Colin. Does amazing battle reports.
Thanks a lot. Cheers, guys.
Absolutely. Tom, sir, thank you as always. To all of you out there, see you next Wednesday.